Greetings. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Jeff,
And I'm Joe.
and after a brief hiatus, we are back to recording and spreading our, let's call it wisdom,
That's a word for it.
our maunderings, whatever you want to refer to them as, but our exploration of the virtues of the chivalric age and how they impact us in the modern day.
Yes.
So how are you, Joe?
I'm good. I'm really good. Things are good.
Great.
Yeah. How are you?
Great. I'm good. Things are good. What are you drinking? Let's get that out of the way right away.
I am having a sidecar.
Ooh, very nice.
Well, it's interesting because ooh,
Don't spill it.
I'm having a sidecar, which is an old drink, old cocktail.
A classic.
Yeah, classic.
Did we mention it in our classic cocktails? I think we did.
Did we do a classic cocktails? Maybe we did.
We did How to Drink Like a Grown-Up, remember?
Oh yeah.
I don't remember
Yeah,
which episode that
we
was.
may have. I've been doing some amateur mixology videos and posting those.
I have
And
witnessed them.
That's been one of them. And I find I like it. It's pretty simple. Ounce and a half of cognac usually calls for, or brandy. 3/4 of an ounce of an orange liqueur like Cointreau or Salerno blood orange liqueur, and 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. Pretty simple, straightforward. It's got the usual components of a drink. Sometimes I'll add some orange bitters at the end, depending on what I'm using. So sometimes a twist, I neglected to add a twist. I chose to omit the twist.
Yeah, it's always a choice. When a mixologist does it, it's a choice.
Yes. And what are you drinking?
I'm going even simpler than that. I am having my standard, my personal brand.
Yeah.
So cheers.
Cheers.
So tonight's episode, this is going to be called The Art of the Apology. We discussed this a little bit before we started recording, and
we've touched on this when talking about courtesy as a virtue.
Yes. In fact, that we were both, I don't know, surprised is probably not the right word, gratified perhaps, that your mother's 4 rules for an apology showed up in our research in various forms. So whether she got credit by any of these scholars, or whether she heard it from them first and translated it to you, I don't know.
I credit her with being the original of it. I don't know where she heard it, or if it was based on her experience, but she's the person who taught me how to weaponize courtesy. So I give her all.
Yes.
I learned.
But that's not what we're about this evening. This is, when we say the art of the apology, it really isn't about artfulness. That is to say, how to do an apology to your best interest. It's about how to do it properly so that the apology is accepted and it works.
A sincere apology, as opposed to what I call a faux apology. And there are ways of recognizing what a faux apology is, and they're also related to the steps of a true apology, a sincere apology. And we could call it the art of an apology, but art is process.
Yes.
I think art is process. And so there's a process, there are steps to doing making a sincere apology.
Towards the end, I want to talk about the idea that making let's first talk about the purposes of an apology. And you apologize when you are expressing regret for an action. You are apologizing because you have done something that you need to take responsibility for and try and make it right.
And that's really key, because if somebody isn't actually expressing regret, then they're not really apologizing.
Right.
And
And you can express regret for or sympathy for a circumstance brought about by an action. You know, I'm sorry this happened, which isn't so much I hurt you. I can't help that I hurt you, but I'm sorry that it happened.
well, there can be, that can be a couple of different things. This, I'm sorry that this was necessary to do.
Yes.
This was necessary, had to be done. Um, I'm sorry, I wish that it had not had to be done, but it had to be done.
And I'm especially sorry that it hurt you,
Yes,
but it was necessary.
yes,
So that's kind of an apology. It's at least acknowledging that something you did harmed or is perceived to have harmed someone. And so that's taking responsibility for it. It's not saying I was wrong. It had to be done, but
well,
I'm sorry that you were harmed by it.
yes, but that's a very specific circumstance.
Right.
There,
But it's legitimate.
it is.
If-
There
When
are
someone comes to me and
situations
says
though
this hurt,
where the first step, and we'll get into the steps, but the first step is actually acknowledging that you did something that was wrong. You made
right.
some kind of mistake or did something wrong.
Yeah. And in my little bit of research that I did, if you're not apologizing, if you're not actually expressing regret, or if you're not expressing regret, if you're not taking responsibility, you're not apologizing, you're making an excuse.
Correct. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there are also circumstances where somebody will say, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry that this circumstance occurred, and had nothing to do with it, but expressing concern, expressing condolences, expressing empathy.
Yeah.
And people will hear that and then turn around. Their response will be, what are you apologizing for? It wasn't your fault. So, well, that was saying you're sorry that this happened, but you aren't saying it happened because of me. You're saying, it makes me sad. I have
Yeah.
sadness for you.
More sorrowful than
Yes.
sorry.
So I'm very sorry for your loss doesn't mean I'm very sorry that I caused your loss.
Right.
It's different. So the response to that, just like the response to a compliment, when somebody's expressing condolences, just like the response to a compliment is to say thank you, the response to somebody sincerely expressing condolences, however awkwardly they're doing it, is thank you. Expressing condolences is another area where that we could talk about, because people do it very badly in a lot of cases. Instead
Yes.
of just keeping it simple, I'm sorry for your loss, you have my condolences, they'll start explaining how this is for the best, and people who are grieving don't want to hear that.
Right.
So but that's a
Um,
different way of saying I'm sorry, but for something else, not an apology based I'm sorry.
and there's another, I don't know, tangential circumstance, and I don't want it to become excuse making, but in the circumstance where, for instance, in a professional setting where you disagreed with someone and it caused tension or caused a breakdown in communication, trying to reopen that conversation by saying, I'm sorry we fell out, I'm sorry this occurred, is a way to take your share of the responsibility without saying you were wrong or admitting that, or you know, it's a way to reopen the conversation by saying, I'm sorry that it got to this point where we are at each other.
Expressing regret.
Yes, exactly. So there's nothing really you're taking your share of the responsibility by saying, I'm sorry it came to this. And so it at least invites the other person to say, yeah, I'm sorry too. And if they don't, well, you know where you stand and you know how the conversation is going to go from there.
Yes.
But it's worth reopening a conversation with, I'm sorry that communications broke down. I'm expressing sorrow that we can't move forward the way we are now. And that's really your purpose, is I want to move forward. Can we do that if I'm willing to take my share of the responsibility?
Yeah, and I think the differences between the apology for something you've done, accepting responsibility for it, expressing condolences, and expressing regret about the circumstances, those are, people will say I'm sorry in all those circumstances,
Right.
but they mean different things.
Yes.
And that's one of the challenges of not just of making a sincere apology, but of recognizing when you are receiving a sincere apology or you are receiving condolences or regret for something, for a circumstance.
So I did a little research and I found something called etiquetteschoolofamerica.com that suggests several definitive steps. They suggest 7. And we do not agree. We're not absolutely congruent in our thinking with etiquetteschoolofamerica.com, but this was the most defined list I could find, in a bullet point sort of style, rather than just this sort of meandering explanation of how to make an apology. And their first step is ask permission to apologize, and delineate. I've added sort of delineate what you are apologizing for.
I think it can be useful to, particularly if some time has passed,
Yeah.
to restate what your understanding of the situation is and of what you did that
Right.
you're apologizing for. So I think that's a useful addition. I found it very interesting that the 7 steps of the Etiquette School of America include my mother's 4 steps.
Yeah.
Apology, also known as 4 steps to forgiveness. That
basically 2 through 5 are the same as your mother's. So,
but I think the thing that my mother made clear is that, and something I often heard from her, the longer you wait to write a thank you letter, the longer the letter has to be, because the more detailed explanation of what you're thanking them for has to be. And I think that if you write a thank you letter right away, as I had to do growing up, whenever I got anything, thank you for the crappy crayons that my mother replaced with really good crayons.
that is a faux apology.
Yeah, that is. I wouldn't know what to say, so I'd always write a little poem, a little A-B rhyming poem, and send that. And my relatives always thought that was wonderful and took a lot of effort. And I thought that was the easiest way to write a thank you note. But the quicker you do it, the shorter it can be, because they know what you're thanking them for. And I think the delineate what you're apologizing for, describe it. The longer time has passed before you decide to undertake this apology, the more that's a necessary step, because you have to explain what you're even talking about.
Right. And it can include both the here's what I did wrong and I feel badly that it came to this. It can include all of that.
So it can really flow into what their second step, my mother's first step is, which is acknowledgement that, and saying, I did something wrong.
Yep.
And so it can really flow into, here's what happened. and here's what I did wrong.
Yep.
Um,
Acknowledge the damage and admit your responsibility.
correct. Um, I often see people omit that step one, or step one and two, um, and jump to the next step, which is um, apologizing. I very sorry, saying the words "I'm very sorry." But if you say you're sorry before you acknowledge what you did wrong, then you're using sorry in the other ways. I'm sorry that this happened. You're using
Yeah.
you're essentially, it's the difference between passive voice and active voice.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry this thing happened.
Or the worst of the faux apology. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Oh yeah, that's a faux apology, because yeah. Um,
When you take no responsibility for what you've done, it's just that I'm acknowledging you feel that way, but I don't care.
right. So these steps that we're talking about have to be undertaken in order, because if you skip over them,
Yeah.
if you jump to I'm sorry without admitting you did something wrong, that I'm sorry could be, this thing happened, it's not my fault, but it's really too bad for you. It could
Yeah.
be that other meaning of sorry. It could be taken as condolences when you're the one who was actually responsible for it. So
And saying something like, I can see why you think that, is not the same as acknowledging what you did. So yeah, so ask, and the first step is kind of asking for your time. Can I
yeah.
want to do this. Can I have a moment of your time to speak about this? So that was actually a good addition, a good first step, because now you're intruding on their attention. If they're
And
angry
yeah,
with you for whatever reason.
and people might not be ready to hear your apology.
Yeah.
People might not be ready to talk about it. I do think that the sooner you recognize what you did wrong and apologize for it, the better. Because the longer it goes, the worse it get, tends to fester. So, but yeah, saying, but there has to be some time often before the parties can talk about it. So
Right.
that can't be written in a rule. That takes some empathy and sensitivity
Yeah.
to understanding whether it's the time is right.
You can, I guess we could talk for a second about like the preemptive in the middle of a conversation, realizing that you stepped out of line, just right there acknowledging, I'm sorry, that was out of line. I shouldn't have said that. Please forgive me. Let's move on. So you're hitting
Yes,
those 4 steps in very rapid succession in the middle of a conversation almost.
yes. Then
But it's
I think if you can do it that immediately, have the self-awareness to do that, I think that's really good. If somebody calls you on something in the middle of a conversation, also good.
yeah,
Um, you should do it right then. Instead of the faux apology, I didn't mean to offend you. Well, the one of the, we're talking about, as we always do, the application of the chivalric virtues, one of which is veritas,
mm-hmm.
um,
Yes.
truthfulness, and another is courtesy, which we're really talking about here. But I think one of the things we also talked about in the context of contemporary gentlemanliness, um, as a broad term, not it's a gendered term, and I don't have a non-gendered term for nobility, maybe. Um,
Okay.
not to take offense easily and not to give offense unintentionally.
Not
Um,
unintentionally.
unintentionally. Well, was that Oscar
A
Wilde?
gentleman, A
Never,
gentleman never offends a lady unintentionally.
never offends anyone unintentionally is the way I heard it, but yeah. Um, but, um, but yes, you're right. If you know, it might happen right there. So you ask for their time using your um,
Yeah,
sensitivity to understand if the
trying
time,
to choose a good moment in the
right?
first place.
You acknowledge, just delineate what happened. You describe the situation, and you then admit what you did wrong. Say I did something wrong, and then you say I'm very sorry for that. But then you have to go further.
Yes, yes. For it to be legitimately accepted,
Yes.
you well, asking for forgiveness there, and then the order of the next two steps might change. Ask for forgiveness and express the intent to not repeat the offense,
I will never do it again.
or I'll try not to do it again, or depending on what it is you did.
There is no try, do or do not, to quote Yoda.
Well, there are some things, I will, it's legitimate to say, as long as you mean it,
Yes.
I will try not to let this happen again.
Mhm.
And that's really all anybody can ever say, for sure.
Yeah, and I think if somebody, um, I often say this to students when they are talking about in their projects they're writing. We hope that this will result in so and so happening, and I say, no, that's not acceptable. Don't hope. Plan. What's your plan? And I would apply that here. What's your plan to never do
Yeah.
it again? How are you planning to never do it again? If this is behavior that you consistently have engaged in, you have to replace a behavior, a reaction, with a different behavior. What is your plan to learn and practice how to replace this, how to never do it again, how to replace this behavior with a different behavior?
Well, I would say that's certainly self-actuating, but I don't know that is needs to be shared in the context of an apology.
No, but I don't think it has to be in the apology. You don't have to go into details about I've got this list and I'm checking it twice and I'm
Right.
going to find out if I've been naughty or nice. You don't have to do that.
Right.
But I think that it's the difference of implication between I will never do it again and I will try to never do it again. Because if somebody is saying I will try to never do it again or trying to not do it again, my question to them would be, well, how can I help you to not do this again? Can
Well,
I
and
help you? Can we talk about how this happened and what are some strategies I can help you develop so that you won't do it again? And
well,
that can,
that's fair, maybe a little presumptuous, but it's fair to, if they say I'll try not to do it again, or I'll try not to let this happen again, that is still a promise that you're going to try. And I agree with you that in yourself you need to, okay, so how am I going to go about trying?
yes,
That's, yeah, I agree with that. If you're making a promise, you have to plan to make good on the promise.
right.
And promising to try is a promise. You're not promising to fail.
Okay.
So
Well,
um
and people don't always do things perfectly.
no, and
And
if you fail, you have to apologize again because you
exactly,
tried and failed.
exactly. So,
So
okay,
I
yeah,
think it's legitimate to say try. To say I will never do that again is setting yourself up for failure, I think.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. Um, I think that it's important though, and what I have understood when I've had to apologize is why did I do this? There has to be some self-reflection. There has
Yes.
to be thought given to why did I do this? Why did I react that way? Why did I act that way? What are the triggers for that behavior for me? What causes what do I do? Why do I react that way? Why do I do these things? And thinking about that and then changing that behavior, if it's habitual behavior, that takes
Right.
planning and that takes practice to do. It's very difficult to change habits.
Agreed. And part of your practice, and we can move on to the next step here, I think, pretty easily, in that part of your plan may be, here's what I'm going to do to make it right. I'm offering this as as recompense for my offense.
Again, I think the difference that I would have with their list of offering to, I think the question, it should be a question, how can I make amends?
Okay, sure.
Asking the person to whom you're apologizing, what would make it right for them?
That's a good distinction.
Yeah.
How can I
Because,
make this right?
yes, because they are the person who was wrong.
Yes.
And so they should decide. So.
Now they go on with two extra steps, and I would consider these kind of optional. If you really do a good job with the first 4 or 5, I think, they recommend reinforcing any of your promises with a handwritten note, going over what your discussion was. And it's kind of like a business practice of, okay, we just had a meeting. Here's what I think happened in the meeting. Here are the action points that came out of that meeting. And, and there, now it's in writing and we both understand it equally. So,
Yeah, I actually think that's really good to follow up with that, because putting it in writing makes it more concrete.
yeah. Yeah.
Non scriptum non est. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist.
Yep.
I think that's
Is
valuable.
there a Latin version now for pics, for selfies? Like non fotandum non est, or
There probably should be. I'll have to look to figure that out. That is yeah. If I don't have a picture of dinner, how do I know I ate? So
millennial Latin. Okay.
yeah.
So, and the last step they say is offer to make amends, and we
Right.
changed the order of that. So,
Well, and act on your promises. That
yes.
you have to do it, actually.
Yeah, right.
If you offer to make amends and you
Oh, you're right.
agree on
I skipped back up. You're correct.
right, you agree on what the amends are, then you have to actually do it.
Yeah, you have to follow through.
Otherwise, if you don't follow through, you've broken your promise, and you have to apologize for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you haven't just offended somebody, you've lied to them.
Yes. And I think that in talking about what it takes to offer a sincere apology, we also should talk about how to recognize when an apology is not sincere. What I call a faux apology.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody skips step 1, again, not if they're expressing regret or condolences, but if they're apologizing for something they did wrong, step 1 is, I did something wrong. And if somebody skips that and just goes to, I'm sorry, without an understand, well, the question is, what are you sorry for? And if they say, well, I'm sorry if anyone was offended, is not admitting that their conduct gave offense.
Yes.
So that's also a faux apology. I also think that if an apology needs to be given, not always, but often in the same forum. If offense is given in a public forum, the apology has to be offered in a public forum, because
Sometimes,
some,
sometimes.
yeah, sometimes, but publicly offending and privately apologizing still leaves the 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 situation unresolved, I think.
Well, it whether the situation is resolved, if you were having an argument with another individual in public, and if it causes a scene, right? If it embarrasses the observers, that's when a public apology is necessary. But you're apologizing for that publicly.
Yes.
The whatever you said to make the other person angry or storm off, or for you to storm off or whatever, the argument you had is a private thing, and you can try and make that apology privately.
Well, the I would disagree with that, in that if the forum, the public forum, is in the context of a shared interest group, a shared social group, something, and somebody says something wrong, does something wrong in that situation, specifically, it happened, I was misquoted, or my quote, or
Certainly happened to me that time.
quoted correctly, but the meaning was intentionally misconstrued, and I took issue with it, and I spoke to the person privately, but required, and they finally apologized to me. I said, that's not good enough, because you did this in this public forum, you have to apologize in the same forum, because otherwise it's left standing that I said something that I didn't say, or meant something I didn't say. You have to correct the record in the same place that you distorted the record.
That's true. I'd say that's a kind of a specific, you're right, you are clearing the record.
Right.
But,
because that's what they did wrong. They distorted the record.
Yes.
And they apologized to me for doing that, but that didn't clear how that was part of making amends. I'd say
yes.
Apologizing in the same forum is part of making amends.
But it's also, they're apologizing then to the group for distorting the record.
Yes.
What I'm talking about is an argument or a discussion or whatever between two individuals got loud in a public situation. The argument was simply embarrassing to the crowd, not, you're not proclaiming to the crowd something that this person did or said. It's the interaction is personal, but the forum is public. So the interaction is what you need to apologize for to the individual, and then you need to apologize publicly for embarrassing everyone, for making everyone uncomfortable. Right. Not for what you said necessarily, if it was true, but the fact that, it was unseemly of me to do this in public, and I apologize to all of you for that. I'm sorry, please go on with your evening or whatever. So
yes, generally I agree with that. There are occasions where making a scene, being willing to make a scene is, and I know this sounds contradictory, but being willing to make a scene is serving a greater good. If by calling somebody out, and I offered to do this in a recent situation, somebody needed to be called out, but I ended up not doing it. But
I mean, I've certainly been willing to embarrass someone when they have stepped out of line publicly. I'm certainly willing to embarrass someone publicly and make them apologize publicly for doing something like that. But so
that only works if somebody has a sense of shame. So
certainly true. So now I want to talk about for a minute about before we wrap up here, you can express regret for an action without saying you've changed your mind. And this is what I was talking about, like in a business situation where,
Mhm.
you know, I'm sorry it has come to this. I'm genuinely sorry that we are now not on speaking terms or whatever. We, but we can't go forward from where we are now. So that's again a way to reopen a discussion so that you can come to either some kind of agreement or at least agreement to disagree, so that you can work together professionally. um I and you can say things like we were just talking about, I sincerely regret causing a scene. That should not have happened. And you can take responsibility for, we should have stepped off to the side. I should have asked you for a moment in private, whatever. Um, and I'm sorry that we quarreled. I think that's a legitimate thing to say without saying I'm wrong, you're right, and completely capitulating.
Well, and again, is what are you expressing regret for,
Right.
and what are you apologizing for?
And that's delineating. That's step one. It's
Right.
delineating
Right.
what you're apologizing for and being very clear that I'm not sorry for what I said. I may be sorry for how I said it and what happened because of it. Assuming you didn't just, poke somebody in the chest and call them a son of a bitch. That's not legitimate. If you're making a point, if you're standing your ground for something you believe, and it caused an eruption in a public venue, okay, what are you apologizing for?
Well, and I think again, it comes back to the rules of courteous behavior. That, and this is when my mother never called it weaponized courtesy, but I've come to think of it that way. That the more you disagree with somebody, and the higher the stakes, the quieter and more calm and more courteous and more polite your speech, because that is, well, my mother said, because it makes them even madder. But and it does often cause somebody, when you're really calm, causes the person you're disagreeing with to lose control, and then they cause the scene. But it's also, you want to calm things down to talk about the issue. When things start getting heated, it starts becoming personal, and then you lose sight of what the topic is, and you want to keep focused on what the topic is. So, um, yeah, that although sometimes, like the farmer with the 2x4 and the
Yeah.
jackass, you
Yeah.
know, why is that farmer hitting the jackass between the eyes with a 2x4? Because with a jackass, the first thing you have to do is get its attention. And so I think sometimes and it's hard to exactly describe what the nuance of, when are you quiet, when do you choose to be more pointed, when do you when do you choose to use the 2x4?
Right.
That
Well, we can't make a bulleted list of how to be socially apt.
Right, right. um um because there have been situations where, um quiet and courteous and calm didn't get
Right.
get the response to address a critical situation. It had to be loud, and it had to be forceful, and it had to be right now. So, um, so I think that there are nuances to this about,
Oh yeah.
when is it public, when is it private, when is it public and calming, and when is it public and forceful. Um, I Years ago, an account executive who was awful to work with. We finally agreed on on the direction of a project, and I had people in all weekend working on it. And then Monday morning, he came in and changed direction of the whole thing without talking to me. And so we burned people's time on the weekends. We burned people out. We spent a lot of money that we didn't need to spend. And he just changed it just because he wanted to. And I found him. He was in a conference room. And I said, I apologize for interrupting. Can I speak with you privately? He said, no, you can talk to me here. I said, no, really, I think it's better if we take this outside and talk about the situation. He said, no, you're going to tell me here. Okay.
Very well.
And I proceeded to, I used some vernacular terms, questioning his judgment, not his parentage, but his judgment and his ethics. And it did get a bit heated. And I told him when he was done with his meeting to come and see me. And I left. So, but because courteous, nice, polite, nothing would get his attention. He was a jackass and he needed a 2x4. And everybody else in the room that he was meeting with held the same opinion of him that I did. And so I knew I was on good ground. But how do you describe when the circumstances are appropriate for that, and when they're appropriate, when you should calm it down? So
right. Well, and the point that you made, that you should always be on topic.
Yes.
Even if it's loud. I mean, even if you are angry and pointing your finger at somebody, the point is still the point.
Yes. And that's one of the points that we talked about in the rules of courteous discourse.
Yeah.
Stick to the topic. Always stick to the topic. Because once it goes off topic, it just becomes an argument and you're not accomplishing anything.
Right.
So, and then you might have to apologize. And the last thing I wanted to do was have to apologize to that asshole.
Yeah, there have been several occasions when, well, and talking about public apologies, it may be that it may be impossible to recreate the public setting in order to apologize publicly, but you have to at least make the private apology.
Yes.
Saying that, well, the moment's gone by, there's nothing I can do, it's too late, everybody's gone. Well, somebody was the focus of this thing, and you need to make it right with them.
Yes.
At least. So, well, what do you think? Did we cover that sufficiently?
I think we did.
Right.
If somebody chooses not to accept your apology, you can still move on and say, I'm sorry you won't accept your apology, but here's what I'm going to do to try to make it right anyway.
Right.
And you can do that.
And asking them, is there any way at all we can move forward? You may think I'm a son of a bitch for the rest of your life, but is there any way we can continue to work together or move forward from here so that we aren't constantly at each other every time we're in the same room together?
And I think not being a Christian, I have asked friends who are about Christian forgiveness, because it's very different. It does not have to be, it is offered unearned. It's offered to people without them having to go through these steps. And I've come to understand why that's an important part of their belief. but I it's not my part of my belief, and I believe that people have to make these apologies in these ways, and uh, forgiveness, unearned forgiveness, to me is um, demeans the person, demeans the people who are wrong,
Yes.
because the person hasn't earned their way to forgiveness. So, but not meaning any offense for, I apologize if anyone is offended. I do, I respect that belief system, even though it's not mine. And it has taught me talking to and asking people who believe this and understand it. It's taken me a while to grasp why that's important to them. Um, I often had to, their explanations often had terminology that was very religion specific and unfamiliar to me, and I had to then ask further questions. But people took me sincerely when I said I want to understand, and I understand. I don't agree, but I understand, and I
I
respect that decision that people make.
and well, I also think that there is a certain value in letting some of your shit go,
Oh yeah,
frankly.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That absolutely I agree with.
I've had someone a couple of years ago who knew that I was angry with them and they knew exactly why. Come up to me and say, "Hey, I know we haven't been, I know you're not real happy with me right now. I just wanted to check in and see if we're good." I mean, that's not an apology, because, and it wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have expected an apology because I'm sure that person could not admit to themselves that they did anything wrong. Um, they acknowledged that I was angry about it. Okay, I was made no secret of that. But there's a point at which I say, well, you're never gonna apologize, because you're never gonna admit to yourself that you did anything wrong.
Right.
I can hold on to it forever, but it's not going to serve anybody. So, you said, okay, yeah, we're good. I mean, you're not forgiven, and I won't forget, but we can be cordial.
Yeah, I'm not going to take any action against you if you're
Right.
trying to see if we're good because you're afraid that there'll be repercussions eventually for the thing you did. That's not going to happen. No, I agree with letting go of stuff. You know, the I just had a high school reunion, and some of those people
Oh, wow.
I went all through elementary school with, and I'm not the same. I'm not the same person I was when I was a child. Good
No.
Lord, that would be absurd. And to be angry at people for the stupid, hurtful things they did as children, that would be that would be insane to hold
Yeah.
on to something that
You'd,
long,
you'd be
because
you'd be a
they're not
comic
this.
book you'd be a comic book villain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, are you sure I'm not? But
No, I'm not. I was probing.
they they they're not the same people either. And it was lovely. It was really nice to see people, and to catch up and to talk to them, and it was see what people are
There's a
doing, and it was
isn't there
really,
a
really
is there a
nice.
John Mellencamp song about that, about seeing the guys that had fights with in high school, and now
Oh,
they just
well, it's
laugh about it.
something, but I don't live in that city anymore,
Right.
and I've certainly moved on, and life has been very interesting. Um, some people matured in very interesting ways. Some got older. Um, yeah, but it was good. I actually we visited my senior high school English teacher, who gave him a copy of my book, signed something to him because and we chatted for a couple hours because
Hmm.
he had a significant impact on the quality of my writing and consequently on the way I think. And it was, so I wanted to thank him. So it was really good.
Well, we are diverging into reminiscence now, and I think we should let these
Well,
poor people go.
Yeah, and I think that this could lead into how to thank people.
Oh,
If you're going to
good idea.
apologize, you should also be willing to thank people. I think if you're willing to call people out on bad behavior, you should be willing to thank people and acknowledge them for good behavior.
Sure.
So,
How to write a sincere commendation.
yeah.
All right. Maybe look for that next session, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah.
And in the meantime, I think we can call it an evening.
I think so.
Have a good evening, and we'll see all of you all later. And until then, be thou
A good night
and true.